All right. Well, this is it. This is the first episode of the PBBG podcast, the podcast for persistent browser-based games, the players who play them, and the developers who make them. My name is Fuhan Pai. I run PBBG.com, which is a listing and ranking site for our games. It's also a resource hub for the community. I also run a game called Imperial Conflict, which is a space-themed military strategy game. Anybody else want to take on the next intro?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Caleb. Most of you guys probably know me as Zala. So I run Elithor's, like my big game, main game. And then I write about making PBBGs at Cardboard Machete. And I'm currently in the process of making a new kingdom builder game called Trounced. So I'm sure you'll be having that shoved down your throat here pretty soon. But yeah, just been a part of the community for a while and loved making games and found my fit here being able to make games for players who like browser games. So
cool. Yeah, I'm ASDF Delta, been around the community for quite a while. I run the State of PBBG survey. I help run the Discord. I started up the PBBG Lite website. I also administrate the blog and the subreddit. So kind of the community guy.
Cool. I'm Ian. I don't have any active projects, at least not that I can announce quite yet. I've been part of the PBBG community for quite a while.
Yeah, well, thanks guys for being here. Super excited to kick this thing off. I know we've been talking about it for a little while. Over the years, I think it's come up now and then. So it's nice to finally actually get something going.
Yeah.
Yeah, super excited. For those unfamiliar, a PBBG, as stated, is a persistent browser-based game. What that means, it's a game that has a persistent universe. So when the game world moves forward, even when the player is not playing. And then obviously it's browser-based, so that you can experience the game entirely within a web browser. So there's no software to download or apps to manage or anything like that. So that's where our space is. That's our area of the gaming world. So you guys want to add anything onto that about what you think defines it or how you feel about it?
Yeah, I know there's there's been conversation over the months and years about what exactly fits into the framework. I know a lot of the games that are in our space are, browser-based multiplayer games. But we've also included stuff like Melvor Idle, which is a cross-platform game that's single player, but is still considered persistent and browser-based because you can play it in the browser and also play it on your phone and pick up where you left off. So yeah, it's a little bit of a hazy, vague description, but we kind of like it that way. It makes our community a little bit bigger. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, we don't see it as a real strict definition. I mean, it can be, but like you're saying, other things do count. Like Torn online comes to mind. It is a game that you could play on your phone, but there is a browser version as well. So why wouldn't we count that?
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything you want to throw onto that?
My connection was getting a little dodgy there, so sorry if I cut out. But yeah, I think principally the persistence is the important part there. So if you log out of your web browser or if you leave, the game continues existing or going while you're gone. And of course, any kind of browser technology, which we were actually just having a conversation today in the Discord about how it's a good thing that in the web sphere, browser technology in general has continued to expand, like with PWAs and Electron and all kinds of fancy apps out there. The term browser-based is getting pretty broad these days. So I think the technical umbrella of PBBGs is actually quite large, but we typically deal with large games that you only play inside of your traditional web browser. But sky's the limit in the future.
Yeah, very, very true. Browsers are capable of a whole lot more than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well,
definitely.
I want to kind of open up the conversation with some personal history about our experiences. Maybe we talk about our first experiences with these games. They've clearly left a mark on us if we're here in this community and sticking around and engaging with players and other devs. How did you guys get started? Like, what was your first kind of intro into the space?
So I guess I'll go first. So I played some browser-based games when I was kind of growing up, but I wasn't super big into it until I actually got my first IT job. And some of the other employees there my coworkers were playing them outside of work and would kind of check in occasionally. And that got me really interested in one game in particular, which is unfortunately down now, called Empire Attack. It was a real-time game. That was pretty interesting, and you kind of expand your empire using clicks to take over little squares and stuff, and it was like super intense. And then from there, it's kind of like spilled out into the giant world of PBBGs. Totally got hooked.
Nice.
Yeah, I was trying to think about this because it's like I've kind of always been playing browser games. Like that's sort of how gaming got started. Like back when Flash was huge, and you had sites like Miniclip and Armor Games and Newgrounds and stuff, just publishing stuff constantly. Probably my first like PBBG would maybe be like Neopets, probably in that area. I also remember playing RuneScape back when that was like exclusively in the browser.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as web technology kind of got better and AAA games started coming out, I just never upgraded. I never really had like the latest gaming system or anything. So I sort of just stuck with what I had and watched the browser game world sort of unfold. So awesome. It's kind of interesting.
I have to agree with you. I think my first browser game was RuneScape. Like I didn't consider it a PBBG, but I guess you're right. It is. I was thinking more along the lines of like text-based games, in which case my first one would have been Gangster Paradise, which is a very old kind of mafia game. And then I got completely hooked on it because everyone in school was playing it, and it's like throw your lunch money on some phone credit, and then you use your phone credit to buy the credits in game, and then you kill everybody. And then from there, it kind of rolled into me wanting to develop games. So I picked up MC Codes, probably a pirated version at that time, I guess. And I just started building, and it was great. And it was my first introduction to programming.
That's awesome. It's funny you mentioned that about playing at school. I feel like that was one of the big draws at the time is this is pre-iPhone days, pre-smartphones, where you couldn't just play a game anywhere. So the idea that you could at least go to your school library or something, or the computer lab if you have a class that has that or whatever, and you could on the sly sneak into whatever you're playing and battle against whoever and try to sneak it in that way. That was my experience anyway. I remember my first one was a game called Planetarian. It's the old space themed kind of war game, and then I dabbled into Utopia as well a little bit. And those were so good because for me. At the time, this is also before multiplayer console gaming, really. It didn't really take off yet. So the idea that you could go online and battle anybody in the world through a web browser was just pretty great and, very novel for when it was. So what do you think keeps you guys engaged in the space as you continue to evolve as a player or, as someone who's interested in games or developing games? Caleb, you mentioned that you didn't keep up with the modern, the newest, latest and greatest Xbox or what PC or whatever. Yeah. Is it more out of a a necessity? Like it's not worth the money to dive into something like that when you have other games that you enjoy, or is there something else, or what keeps you in it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the mechanics, honestly. Mechanics are what make or break a game. As someone who's designed games for forever, figuring out how something works mechanically is what part of the joy of it for me. And so browser games, you're kind of stuck, right? You don't have AAA graphics. You don't have cool physics engines to work with. You've got a little bit, but for the most part, you're relying on fun and unique mechanics. And as far as creativity goes, I feel when you have constraints and limitations, you can come up with cooler stuff creatively because you're I can't just rely on, making awesome graphics. And so I think that's probably what keeps me around, just finding new games and new things that people want to try and sort of break the mold for what typical games are and trying brand new mechanics or brand new ideas that just haven't been tried before and might be too expensive to try other places too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, when you have a game it's hyper realistic, it has the most amazing graphics, that doesn't make it a great game. It just means it's pretty to look at. And you see a lot of that in the AAA space, the things that, it may show off the coolest, whatever, video tech or whatever, but it's kind of bland as an experience and forgettable. Yeah. On the flip side of that, like you're saying, if you have constraints that are kind of forcing you to, every decision mechanically matters that much more because it's so much more significant. It's it's a great point.
Totally nailed it on the head for me as well. Yeah. If a game like Halo or Horizon Zero Dawn were a PBBG, it would be a lot more interesting mechanically,
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of time and energy put into the visuals of big AAA games today, but I think that a lot of the creativity and innovation is actually happening kind of down at our level, and I really enjoy the low barrier of entry, right? So you don't have to have 12 years of experience in game design and Unity and all these like ridiculous expensive technologies in order to make a PBBG. You can just throw some text on a screen with some JavaScript and put a server back at it. Like, there you go. And that's the great thing for me. The reason why I've stayed so long and why I really enjoy kind of being where I'm at inside the community is that I like trying to push that barrier even lower and create guides and try to help other people create more games, because the more energy that we have in there, the more interesting mechanics we're going to get out of it, and the bit more competitive atmosphere, and more games, everybody wins.
Yeah. We were just talking before the call started too about like a new developer who's made a game called Monarchy, and just like a super brief summary of the game is like, everyone's working together for a common goal, and that goal, basically whatever it is that they try to invest in, the developer focuses on next. So an example is like they were investing in like a lumber mill, all the players, and then when that lumber mill project is completed, the developer creates like the whole woodcutting skill and releases that to the community. And like as a game designer and a developer, my first initial instinct is that would never work. But actually watching this person who like doesn't actually know that much about programming, but the barrier is so low, they can just put it up and get instant feedback and get hundreds of people willing to try it out. And, maybe it does crash and burn, or maybe they have a unique twist that hasn't been tried before that, works. That kind of stuff is like what brings life to the genre, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like, it helps like, prototype, creativity. You don't have to have like this crazy system or a developer account or whatever. You could just kind of, pick up the very bare minimum that you need to try something out, and people could give you instantly like their take on it, or, a spin on it or something.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. How about you, Ian? What keeps, I'm sorry, did you already mention what, sorry, I'm getting lost.
No, I didn't. I was coming next.
Okay.
For me, it's less about the mechanics and more about the community. There's so many games out there that have great mechanics or great stories or things like that, but very few of them actually have good communities. From the games I've run, I've had an interesting mix of communities. But yeah, for me, primarily, it's just if you've got some players that are highly passionate about it and are willing to help out and talk about the game, building up new friendships, building up new connections, that's definitely it for me.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. And I think about the communities that I've been in, as well as this community itself, but Imperial Conflict, the players that I've known for like going on 15 plus years. I can't think of many, people that I played, Counter-Strike with like 15 years ago that I still talk to. It's not the same. Like, I don't know if it's something about, our games tend to lean into text-based experiences. I don't know if there's something about that as a form of communication that lends itself more towards establishing rapport or something. But the community aspect is definitely significant for me as well.
And to kind of bounce off of that, we could be pretty real here. Most gaming communities are like insanely toxic, and they just eat developers alive and studios, and they're just like the worst types of people out there.
Oh yeah.
And we do have a couple of people who are just like up to no good, but in general, the vast majority of people are good natured, supportive, and great players. So that is definitely a plus for the community.
That is an excellent point, because I agree with Ian. Like, part of the joy of this community is the community and like the players, and yeah, there's drama and there's stuff that goes around, but for the most part, like, it's all pretty good natured and all pretty fun. And then, yeah, compared to other gaming communities, like I'll throw League of Legends under the bus because it's just, I played for like a long time, and that community is like horrible. And it's like Riot has gotten to the point where they're not even trying to improve it. They're just trying to make it less horrible. And so like just, removing methods of communication for people so they can't scream at each other so much. But yeah, it's like, as far as that being the opposite end of the extreme, having the forums and Discord and like text-based interactions that we can create in PBBGs is, it just helps create much stronger and healthier community. So yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And it doesn't solve the problem. Obviously we all have our own challenges we see in Discord. And I know that I have, not going to get too much into it, but I see there's a lot of problems around, players being, harassment and that kind of thing. That's never going to go away. That's always going to be there. But there's something, I don't know if it's not being voice chat in particular, or maybe it's not the kind of like hyper aggressive game itself where you're, shooting people or something like Dead by Daylight comes to mind. I know that has a problematic community. Sometimes I've heard bad stories about that, but yeah, it seems like that's less of a problem generally for us, which I'm very thankful for, although it still exists and we still have to be mindful, not just as developers, but players as well, when we are interacting with other people, to try to be, positive where we can be, and, not just feed into the negativity when we do experience it ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think text-based games have less toxicity generally because we don't have things like Twitch. I mean, you mentioned League of Legends, and think of the big streamers. The first person you think of is Tyler One.
Yeah.
And all he does all game is shout and scream and cry. And people watch, thousands of people watch this.
Oh, yeah.
And that influences the game and it influences the community. And because he gets away with it, everyone else thinks they can get away with it too. Like with PBBGs, we don't have that outlet. We don't have those people that are streaming to thousands of people that can corrupt. I don't know the right word for it, but they, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I wonder at what point might that be something that we do encounter? Because for myself, I do think that making a PBBG streamable is technically possible. There are design opportunities there to make, Stream Raiders comes to mind. I don't know if you guys have seen that on Twitch. Yep. I think that technically would qualify as a PBBG. I think there's going to be other games that come up in the space that are browser based and they're persistent, but they are also streamable. Maybe not to the extent, like we won't see the kind of numbers that you see with something like League, but I do wonder if that will become a problem at some point, that, problematic or, maybe not so friendly interactions to become something that other people emulate. That would be, that would be something that would be an interesting challenge to have to overcome, but I guess it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. And I know it's something that we want to cover on the podcast at some point in the future too, is like community management and what that looks like, and setting a precedent and cultivating a culture of players that are like nice and welcoming and help each other out. Because I think a lot of it is in the design of not just the game, but the community, like how the developer interacts with the community, the types of moderators that they choose to put in place in the community, right? The methods of communication that are available to players, all those things kind of play into it. So I think we'll probably dig a lot deeper into that at some point in the future.
Definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the, I know we want to talk about the survey results. Chris, did you want to give a quick overview of what's going on here? We're about to look at. I'm going to pull it up on screen in a sec.
Sure. And I have a couple of things. I was trying to share it to you, but I don't think I can. The actual responses, other than the raw responses, but so the annual State of PBBG survey, I got the idea from the State of JS survey, which is wildly successful in aiming what it's doing. It's not perfect yet, of course, but it has the same problem that we have, which is reach. It's not totally representative of the entire community yet, but every year we get a bit closer.
Yeah.
So we did this survey in January, and that went into February, and we have published the responses on the PBBG blog, as you can see up here. So this is a pretty interesting look. We had the same person collated as last year. I love the way that he did a couple of these things. So did you want to go through each of the pieces? I could have planned on going through the community responses because I think those are really interesting.
Did it just crash? Sorry about that. I think we just lost the screen there. A second. I don't know if we need to go through all of them. Or what seems like the most practical way to demonstrate the idea? I don't know if we have to go through all of them, but if there's a highlight or you said the community stuff.
Yeah, so the blog itself, it's just if you go to the survey itself, if you go to the blog, it just shows a good breakdown of all the things that we're trying to track, which is how many games you're playing, what types of mechanics are you interested in, what kind of features will turn you off or on, like microtransactions about a certain game, how new you like it. I wanted to serve a couple of different purposes. First and foremost, get a good representative view of what is really out there in the landscape as far as persistent browser-based games go, as well as serve as a kind of holy Bible guide to making new games, because this will literally tell you what people want.
Yeah, no, it's definitely helpful.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of games that have a lot of like steam behind them, and the developer's really pumped about it. And as soon as it releases, it just completely flops because people just aren't interested with it. So, and it's really heartbreaking to see that. So I'm hoping this will help guide people, even like developers of games that are currently ongoing. This will kind of show you the more interest, as that kind of moves from area to area throughout the thing.
Sure, that's good. Is there anything specifically you want me to go towards?
I don't think with the screen share, we didn't actually publish more of the long form answers, so I wanted to kind of go over a couple of those that I think were pretty interesting. So we added a question: what can be added to the community that would benefit everyone the most? And we got some pretty inventive ideas out of this. One was community tutorials. So just tutorials thrown up on how to make games, exploration of new mechanics, stuff like that. And I think that kind of dovetails a lot into the original mission for the blog, which we could probably talk about on a different episode, as a kind of a global resource. Another one is global multi-game leaderboards, which would be pretty interesting. Centralized leaderboards would be pretty cool. And then, let's see, what was another one? A central news hub for all updates of all games across the board so that you could tap into one kind of place. I think we had something similar to that for the listing site, right, Furon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a news feed that pulls across various different games that are publishing their news in whatever format it is.
Great.
Yeah, they're on the right. Yeah.
There you go. Perfect. So, I think that's a great area that we can continue to invest in, because clearly, there's some value and interest in it. I think the rest of it, I kind of want to put out into the Discord as just kind of a full up dump of responses. But those were a highlight of some of the interesting ones that kind of came up in those questions.
That's awesome. I like the last point there about updates, because to me, I feel like it's not an obvious thing to think about when you think about gaming, like what people go there to play, right? But players also really, really value information, like just knowing that the developers or the community, that there's something happening, that it's not dead. Especially in our space, because we have such a problem with older games kind of like falling off, or even newer games just kind of coming up but then going stagnant, and a developer could disappear or something. It happens, unfortunately. So hearing that players do like to something that came through in the survey is focused on receiving updates, and it shows the value of communication, which I think is really nice to see that reaffirmed.
Totally.
One of the things that oh no, go ahead.
There was also one response to the question, do you have any comments or concerns for the PBBG staff? And one of the responses was, ASDF Delta smells faintly of cheese. So thank you to whomever put that out there.
So is the problem that it's faintly? It's not like strong enough?
Of course. It's got to be crisp, good cheese, a good Gouda,
Nice.
Oh man.
Is there?
I think one of the things that I thought was really interesting about the survey results was that there's actually a lot, like, players seem to have preferences across the board. Like couple of the questions that were asked were like, what are the single player or multiplayer features that would make you more likely to play a game? And the spread across the different features for the most part was pretty even. How often do you prefer to interact with your games? Again, pretty even. Like, players had preferences kind of across the board. But one of the consistencies that I saw, like probably halfway down or so, is how often do you like your games reset? And that was like almost overwhelmingly never, right?
Yeah, right here, yeah.
And then if you go down a little further where it says, how graphical do you prefer your games? And almost like the overwhelming majority says a little graphics.
Yeah.
And for the most part, like, those are the two core things that the community sort of agrees on. Like, we don't want highly graphical games. We don't want purely text-based games. We want something that has some iconography, and we want something that we're going to invest in over the long haul, right? Not something that gets reset constantly, but something that we can play for years and years and years. And I see that, a lot throughout the different games, even if you have wildly different feature sets or, autoplay or, whatever different feature sets you might have. If you have those two things kind of really consistently, like, the community tends to really grab onto those. So it was really cool to see that reflected in the survey results.
So I do want to also point out, sorry, Fu, this survey has a crippling problem of biased data. The people who are surveyed are people who typically are playing games with a little bit of graphics and never reset. So
yes,
just kind of keep that in mind as we're looking at this. There is an ongoing effort to continue to expand our survey audience pool to different games, different areas of the community that typically are underrepresented. So just kind of take this with a grain of salt.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was just going to say too, like, with Trounced, the upcoming game that I'm working on, it will have like realms that do reset. So I'm trying to buck the trend a little bit and introducing that as a concept and seeing if people really do hate it as much as they say they do, or if it's just an underserved demographic. So
sure,
yeah, great.
I think resets are an interesting thing because it definitely depends on what genre of games you're playing.
Very fair.
For example, fantasy games like Idlescape or Melville Idle, like, these games don't need to reset because the balancing isn't around them. But then if you look at more Mafia games, especially ones that have kill in them, which is permadeath, ones that allow people to actually take on properties and take over cities, like, resets are quite crucial in the balancing of these games. So while a lot of people don't like them, I'd be really interested to see what genres these people play.
That's a good point. It's I mean, you're going to get different answers, like you're explaining, depending on where, what subspace you're in. It would be interesting to see that kind of reflection and see what learnings could be made depending on what game or what type of game that you're planning to build if you're a developer, or even as a player, if you're, trying to get into one type of game versus another. What can you expect given off, based off of what the rest of the community is wanting or experiencing. Yeah, it's funny thinking about like the persistent part of persistent browser-based games is the idea that people would never want to reset. It does kind of make sense because the persistence is a little devalued if things are constantly in flux. But yeah, I don't know. I always imagine that there's room for both, and I would love to see a game design this. I've wanted to do it myself with Imperial Conflict, but support a system where there is both a never-ending component and there is also a round-based type of thing that somehow either exists independently in a healthy way that doesn't, cause imbalance, or possibly coexist in a way that can maintain a healthy balance. I have no idea what that would look like, but it's a very interesting idea to see if you could maybe please both crowds. I don't know.
Is there any correlation between the amount of hours somebody puts into a game and their opinion on resets?
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, I could see it being a little demotivating to see all your hard work kind of, get thrown away.
Yeah, I'm looking at the correlated charts at the very bottom, and we don't have one specifically for that. We have the how frequently you want to play and how many different games are you playing, which is interesting, but not any for Yeah, the reset.
For a lot of hardcore players and people that actually want to grind the leaderboards, I would have said a reset would be preferable to them. Whereas the casual player who only logs in once a day and just does their thing very much doesn't want to reset because they don't have that time to constantly grind up.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The thing that I think of is the new player, like people coming in and feeling like there's, they can't possibly compete because, the game's been going on for 3 years already and they just can't do it, versus maybe an older player who knows they're sitting pretty at the top and they established a lead early on. So those 4 groups of people would be interesting to see how that data is split across them. It's definitely a interesting problem, and it could change your design intentions a lot, obviously, depending on who you're trying to cater to. I can see that being a whole topic of itself.
Well, if just want to put out there in the PBBG blog for the post for the survey results, there is a link to the raw data, which is public. If anybody is industrious enough that wants to download the data and correlate those results, have at it.
Nice.
Just saying.
Yeah. Was there
also see the faintly smells of cheese comments?
Nice.
So, Chris, was there anything that you saw in particular compared to the data from last year that stood out as different or surprising in any way?
I think it was kind of hard to correlate between the two of them because it was a lot of making sure that we were asking the right questions and what was the outcome, the data set that we kind of wanted to get out of it. So I think between last year and this year, it was a lot of making sure that we got the survey format right, the timing and process and stuff. I'm hoping next year we'll have a 3-year on a couple of the core questions. We'll have a 3-year kind of chart, and I want to start plotting significant axes like how much graphical do you like your games? What are the single player and multiplayer features that you like the most? I think those are going to be really great to see plotted over time.
Yeah, that would be super great to see how it evolves. The 4th, 5th year, at some point, we're going to be able to continue to get incredible insights from this. It's really exciting.
Totally.
All right, well, let's move on to the game jam. I'm super excited to talk about that. We started talking about it a little before we started recording, so I'm ready to tap into that energy because it's the community, man. I love seeing so many people not just developing these things, but players hungry for them. So that's super exciting. I do have the Reddit post up here. I'm not sure if is there something that the best thing to show, or is there a specific games we should look at?
If you open up the itch.io link, I think that'll be a great place to start. So this is our annual official game jam. So we did it last year for the PBBG State of PBBG survey results, and it kind of dovetails into it. We kind of want to encourage the usage of those results to create new concepts, new mechanics, and that kind of thing. So Game Jam was a natural progression of it. So this year we had 3 entries, but we had 22 people who signed up to play it, which is our biggest yet. And that's absolutely fantastic. We had 3 submissions that are currently being voted on right now. We have Lewis Station, we have Project TBD, and the Underground Tomorrow. There we go. And Underground Tomorrow has a fantastic UI.
Seriously, I was impressed.
Retro. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, and each of these games, I think, are a great step forward in a lot of different ways. Yeah, see, there you go. That's so cool. It looks just like a Pip-Boy, like Fallout.
Yeah,
it's a good time. So the amount of energy that we've had behind it, like I said, there were 22 people who signed up from all over the community. It was great to see it. I know one game in particular didn't get submitted, but is going to continue development into a full release game instead of just a jam game. Yes. And a whole lot of people picked up old projects and started going back at them again. So I think overall it was a big net to to the community and the amount of ideation happening and imagination and trying to get out there and put better ideas out there. So
I love that. I love just even that point you made about people, maybe shaking off the rust and just getting back into something that they dropped a while ago, like creatively. That's so inspiring. So I'm sure you guys have all experienced that, where you have like, a dozen or so or a million ideas in your head or whatever. And there's so many things that you want to do. And this being a perfect opportunity for somebody to think, you know what, there's a jam happening. I'm motivated. Let's make it happen. Let's see what we can do, especially if it's a collaborative effort. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think this is, we saw some developers who were streaming their progress throughout it. They were sharing a lot of what was going on. I think that's a great opportunity to tap into that area. I think we already talked about streaming a little bit, but I always think it's fascinating to watch developers kind of go about their journey. And a game jam is great because it's in a lot more condensed profile than several year long project and just hopping on the ride. So yeah, it was great energy, great participation. I think everyone did a fantastic job. And in the next, 2 weeks, I think, we're going to collate the results of the winner, and they will be crowned. I have a couple of ideas of a couple of different perks for the winner of the 2022 Game Jam.
That's awesome.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, great work. Taking the lead on that and coordinating and managing, and I've heard nothing but great energy, responses, and excitement in the Discord, and it's a great thing for the community and just individually for those people involved. I can only imagine how fulfilling that is for them to exercise those creative muscles. That's super, super cool.
Yeah, I know something else we were talking about too before like the stream started with the Game Jam specifically is how it marries like the developer side of our community with the player side of our community, how developers get to flex their muscles and, shake off the rest and try a brand new project. And players get to see, new mechanics and try out games that are, just brand new being developed and give their feedback on them and, trying out cool stuff. So I know one of the things that you did, Delta, with this Game Jam specifically was you picked out a couple of the main features that were rated the highest on the State of PBBG survey, the ones that players said they liked the most. And that was kind of the criteria for creating these games. So it really is like a game jam after what the community wants, which I know players just love. So yeah, it was really cool seeing those two things fit together.
Yeah. It's great relationship building. And I've talked about this a lot. I probably mentioned it like so many times it's annoying, but I feel like our community does lend dev heavy. I say that all the time because it's true. There's, all four of us are developers. We're players too. But I feel like that is something that we need to put effort into, not resolving because it's not a problem, but just being more inviting and inclusive of players who don't have a technical background. And something like this is a great opportunity for them to feel like they're involved and they're not alienated from the community, or they feel like they're participating in a playtesting capacity. They're in the conversation. So that's really exciting to see too. Just the fact that you could come in here, hear a bunch of dev talk in one of our dev channels, but not be overwhelmed by that, because you don't know what that's about, and still feel like you could participate and feel like you could be, represented, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it does a great job as well of taking all of our different channels where we engage with players and helping to kind of put a string through them and tie them together into a little bit more of a cohesive landscape, which has always been my goal, to take, the subreddit, which isn't terribly active, but it's certainly not dead. And the Discord, which is a lot more active. I think we have almost 1,000 people in our Discord. And that's just absolutely fantastic. I love the activity in our Discord. Actually, in that vein, our Discord is, I think, just a couple people shy from getting a official community status with Discord, which gives us a ton of extra benefits and perks and stuff. So, yeah, we just need a couple more, I think, regular communicators, and then we should be good. Yeah,
that's fantastic. I'll make sure to drop the link here, and we'll see what we can do. And I will say on that point, it's always been great to see the Discord grow, but I've always been so happy to see the quality doesn't become compromised by growth. We're I'm sure you guys have been in those giant Discords where it feels a little hostile, or it's just maybe not quite comfortable. But ours, as it's continued to grow, has maintained such a great spirit of friendliness and helpfulness, and it's not like we're, boring or anything. It's just everyone's so cool and so chill and just great people. I really, really do appreciate that about what we have.
Yeah, the people that are in there are great at managing themselves and helping police, the bad actors that are always there. And the ratio of people who cause problems to the community and actively subtract from it versus the people who actually give back and participate in it is something that I've never really seen before. Not that that's a challenge to the internet. I'll take that up.
We're done for.
But it's fantastic. This is I know we keep harping on how great the community is, but it really is just an amazing community.
Yeah, it's always great to come and hang out with everybody. And all right, well, I think we might be getting ready to wrap up here. Not right now, but maybe we're coming to the end of that topic. I did want to ask you guys if there's anything that you think you want to get out of this podcast, like long term, or like any specific. I know we did a whole brainstorming session about topics, but is there any like main points you think you would be wanting to hit maybe on the next episode? I know we still have to decide, or what seems relevant for the next conversation. I know Dead Games was one that came up because there's been some news going on there. But
we could have a democratic poll.
We could
throw it to the community.
Polls, right?
That's a great idea.
I mean, we have a list of 30, 40 different ideas between us.
I went ham.
You did.
Posted
Not a bad problem to have.
Totally.
So maybe we just pick a few and then poll them in the Discord and see what people think.
That's a great idea, actually. See what people want to hear on the topic of surveys. Why not, right?
Yeah.
Give people what
we
they
all
want.
know what we want. We want the technical stuff, but as you said earlier, being more inclusive to players, not just developers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be good.
Should we do a survey for the survey? For the podcast about the survey?
Serverception.
I do want to throw in my vote for monetization. I think that's an issue that hits both devs and players, and so that should be part of the survey form. Just unpacking kind of what the different strategies are, what players tend to prefer, examples of good / bad monetization. So,
yeah, well, that's another great example of something that has obvious, impact on both sides. The players are going to be super unhappy if it's not done in a way that feels comfortable. And obviously the developers, they have to do it in a way that's sustainable. So that would be a great example of that.
I think it will give a lot of good insight as well from a developer perspective as to why we implement microtransactions or cosmetics, or why pay to earn, pay to win, is a thing in some games.
Sure. Or even having
players just dismiss it straight off the bat.
Yeah. Or even having to do something as simple as plug in a Patreon. I know I've had experiences where players get upset at that, unfortunately, because they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to milk money." I'm like, "Dude, it's a donation." Like, I'm not even saying you have to play the game, but I get it. Money is a sensitive thing, and people are understandably cautious around it. But like you said, Ian, having some insight about the whys from the developer side would be good to go over as well.
I don't think some players realize how much work is actually involved in developing a game. From start to finish, it's so much. And having monetization at the end, it's a little payback for the developers. And if you enjoy the game, not everything in this world can be free,
Sure. Sometimes it's not even a matter of choice. Sometimes it just has to happen for the game to stay up. And if it doesn't, then the game will have to go offline. That is a reality.
Yeah,
that's it sounds like we've got a good contender for a potentially lively conversation, but we'll get that survey going as well. Is there anything else? Go ahead.
If that conversation ever goes a little dry, we can always tap into Ian's favorite subject, crypto in games.
Yeah,
there you go.
I was literally just going to suggest that alongside monetization.
Yeah, there you go.
It dovetails nicely. Yeah,
absolutely.
And after our 700 message conversation about NFTs,
I'm pretty sure that's a light conversation.
Light, yes.
Compared to what it could be. All right.
Very true.
You guys got anything else to cover, or we want to go ahead and wrap it up? Hit the outro, hit the plugs. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Good first episode.
I think so. I think we.
I just want to tell everyone listening. We are literally in 4 different time zones. And so the amount of effort it has taken to get us all on the call at the same time is monumental.
And mistakes
So,
and
yes.
misleading.
And I accidentally put the wrong time zones in when telling people when we were supposed to be here. So yes, the fact that we are all here is a miracle, and you should all be appreciative of that. So
very true, very true. We'll see if we can replicate that success next month.
I know, right?
We'll see. We'll see.
Next month I'll be in a different country, so that's going to be fun.
Make it even harder.
All right. Well, before we drop the info for the podcast, do we want to do any plugs in particular? Caleb, I know you got a couple of things. You want to do some self shout outs there where we could find you, the stuff that you're working on? Yeah.
So if you're a developer at all and you're interested in making PBBGs, I've written like half a dozen articles, maybe a little bit more about it at my website, Cardboard Machete. So if you Google that or just go to cardboardmachete.com. I don't actually know of anyone else writing blogs like that in the space. And so, yeah, I feel like it's a unique perspective. I know some people like Ian are telling me to write more and more and more. So yeah, if you're a developer and you're interested, go check that out. And then I also have a new game coming up soon, Trounced. So, stay tuned for that. It's be like a kingdom builder type game. Think, Travian, Tribal Wars with some old school gaming mixed in. So yeah, plug's done.
Awesome. Well, before we actually wrap up that plug, I'm going to make use of the screen sharing and pull it up. My timing's a little off here.
While you're doing that, can you go into why is it called Cardboard Machete? What's the inspiration behind the name?
That's kind of a long story. I don't actually know. There's not like a clear answer. I've been making board games for like probably 10 years on and off, and finally actually built like my very first board game like 3 or 4 years ago. And so like the idea of it being cardboard, right? So cardboard and then machete, I have no idea. It worked. It was a free domain name.
That is important.
So it's the idea that I can make cardboard, or I can make board games and video games together. So at some point I'll have board games up on this website too. I'm working on a board game on and off right now because I don't have enough stuff going on in my life. But yeah, my wife actually made me, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but she made me an actual cardboard cutout with a machete. So I have that sitting on my desk. Yeah.
Nice.
So probably not the answer you were looking for, but
hey,
no, it was pretty.
It works.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
All right.
It's too long for a Twitter handle though. I found that out the other day. I went to sign up and it's too many characters. So I had to get at CB Machete. Yeah.
Bummer. That works too though.
Things you don't think about.
Yeah, that is a great name though. It is a memorable name.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. For myself, I'll do my self plug here. PBBG.com. I had trouble. It's a mouthful. I will say it is a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
I've always wondered if we should have like another name or something, but I want to stick to it. I want to get that brand recognition, that you build that brand awareness. I just got to get used to saying it more, correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, PBBG.com is my primary one of my primary projects. Is mentioned. imperialconflict.com is the other one. It's I think one of the longest running games that I know of, PBBG or not. It's we're on our 22nd year this year.
Dang.
Yeah, it's been around forever, and we're not going away anytime soon. So if anyone out there is interested in joining and checking it out, it's going through some rework. It's been going through some rework, but always putting time into it, and I love the project. And as well as that, I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/FuonPie. If you guys want to see me just goof around, play games, do dev talks sometimes, that kind of thing. That's where you can find me. Chris, Ian, you guys got anything you want to shout out in general? It doesn't have to be a project you're working on. It could just be anything, everything.
Not the moment for me. I have a couple of things in the pipeline that I'm hoping I can start plugging next podcast, but not this one.
All right. Teaser.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'm pretty much along the same lines as Chris. Most of my projects are under NDA at the moment. However, touching on the fact that Caleb was talking about blogs and not many people, if anybody does want to write some quality content, I'm happy to offer a reward of $30, $40 for an article on PBBG.com if you're interested in writing a little bit of motivation.
All right.
There you go.
That's great. That's exciting. All right. Well, I guess that will do it for us here. You guys can find more info on this podcast at pbbg.com/podcast. See, then I said it well. It flowed off the tongue very nicely there. But yeah, we'll also get this posted on the YouTube channel. We'll get a link in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. And lastly, if you guys want to support, the project that we're doing here, this podcast, but also our community in general, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/pbbg. That helps cover the cost of the podcast publishing and distribution, but also the cost of just running the PBBG website itself. If your donations are always welcome, and I think that would do it. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I'm looking forward to next month's podcast, and thank you all for being here today. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Sounds good. We'll see you guys.
Thank you. See ya.